I just, I just, I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to episode 95 of the Speak My Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. Like we always do about this time, I hope this episode reaches you all in good health. Hope that you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones. If this is your first time listening to the Speak My Peace podcast, welcome. If it's not, welcome back. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate all your listenership all across the globe. I know we have international listeners. Thank you all for tuning in. I can't stress enough how important that is to my YouTube viewership. Thank you all for deciding to watch this episode. Make sure that you all share the podcast. Sharing is caring, as they say. But make sure for real you're sharing the podcast with friends, family, people who may think like you or people who think differently than you. Definitely just share the podcast. I can't stress enough how important that is. Today we got a very special episode. I reached a milestone. Today, the date I'm recording this episode today, has been 10 years since my high school graduation. And that's to look back on this past 10 years is crazy. And that's what we're going to do in this episode. Just reflect on my past 10 years and maybe get into the next 10 years. But just quick before I do get into everything, I do want to say shout out to all my friends that I graduated with. Whether we graduated from the same high school or we graduated the same year. This is monumental. Prayers up to the families of those who graduated with me and is not here today. That's definitely unfortunate. But I'd be remiss if I didn't use this platform to share this milestone with you all. It's a very important milestone. It's a very big milestone for many. Many people have different beliefs on, how they determine the importance of schooling, whether it's grade school, whether it's higher education or higher learning, whatever it is, whatever importance you put on it, whatever value you place in it, completing school, no matter what level it is, it's a huge accomplishment because we all know we've all been through it. The majority of my demographic are adults. And we understand, the task at hand with dealing with schooling, and it's not something that's easy. For some it's very easy, and for some it's not. We all learn differently. We all go through different things. We all go through different personal things, and life happens. And so there's a lot of haymakers that come down the wire as we go through the schooling process. And just to start this episode, I just wanted to, there's a lot of things that I'm proud of that I've done in the past 10 years, and I just want to start this episode off with bringing off my accomplishments because I keep going back to what my friend Sean said, episode I believe 86, was that people they don't give themselves flour enough, and I since then I've tried to be better about that, and so I wrote a quick list of things that I'm proud of myself for this past decade since I graduated high school. For one, enlisted in the military and during that stint, all the experience that I got from it and going straight out of high school and then in the military and having that experience as a paralegal, all the great friends that I made, the traveling that I've done, the training that I've done, all that, I'm definitely grateful for it. Bought my first car within the past 10 years. I'm definitely proud of that. That car got repossessed, 2021? That car got repossessed like 6 years ago. I'm not proud of that, but still the experience of not owning a car, but experience of purchasing a car, going to a dealership and negotiating that car price and driving off the lot with that car and, say what you want about car loans and APRs and things like that, but the feeling of having a car is definitely grateful, especially when you come from a household where you didn't own a car for a long amount of time or a long period of time. So that's definitely was one that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of purchasing my first laptop within the past 10 years. I don't have that laptop to this day because it got stolen. Not because I don't have it, but I did immediately purchase a replacement laptop, and that same laptop is the laptop that I'm recording on as I record this podcast. So I'm definitely grateful about that. I'm grateful to have moved to beautiful cities such as San Diego and lived there for 3 to 4 years. Extremely grateful to have moved to my dream city in New York and lived there for 3 to 4 years. Proud of, going to St. John's and graduating and getting my bachelor's degree from St. John's and accomplishing that feat in a amount of time, in a shorter amount of time than was set for me by my advisors. That's definitely a huge accomplishment. I'm glad to wake up every morning and work for a company that deals with the media, that deals with the handling of media for one of the biggest media agencies or media conglomerates or technological conglomerates in the world today. One thing that's not, we don't big ourselves up on one thing we don't place a lot of value on. I'm glad that 10 years from graduating high school, I'm still in good shape. Despite whatever body ailments I may have, I still wake up every morning and run. I still wake up and work out, and I still, play sports and things like that. I'm definitely grateful for the past 10 years that I did not fall off the wagon in that. Alcoholism. I'm glad that I dropped the habit of consuming alcohol as fast as I picked up the habit of consuming alcohol. That was a personal decision, but it was one of those decisions that, as I move forward and as I grow older, it's definitely something that's going to play a huge role, and it's definitely going to have great benefits for me later on in life. But I'm glad that it's not something that, I enjoy as much as I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it today. Even if I, decided that, hey, I'm going to start drinking alcohol again, I can do that. But I'm glad that I gave myself the opportunity at such a young age to cut it out. Because we've seen it time and time again as alcoholism played, especially in Black people's families. Alcoholism is a key ingredient for a lot of things that goes wrong. Traveling, I've done a lot of traveling. I've seen some of the most beautiful waters in the Atlantic. I've seen some of the most beautiful waters in the Pacific. I'm getting ready to go on vacation next week as I record this episode. But I'm just grateful for all the traveling that I've done within the United States, outside of the United States. I've never foresaw any of that. And that's definitely something that I'm very proud of. And one of the most proudest accomplishments that I can say is I've become an uncle in the past 10 years. And that is probably one of those things that it didn't give me a new lease on life, but it definitely opened my eyes up to a lot of things. It definitely brought a lot of joy to my life. And I can't stress enough how important being an uncle and what that has done for me in the past 10 years. So, yeah, man, it's been the other things that I definitely probably left off this list that I can cover, but those are just the ones that I wrote down off the top of my mind that really, really bring me joy, and I'm proud of myself for accomplishing in the past 10 years. I guess I'll just start this episode off by me 10 years ago. What was my 10-year plan 10 years ago? I don't know what my 10-year plan was 10 years ago, to be honest. I can try to think back to what it was, but I think that my 10-year plan on this day 10 years ago was I had just graduated high school, and I knew I was going to the Air Force, but the date that I was leaving wasn't until the following year. So I left for the Air Force on my birthday in 2012, and I graduated in June 2011. So that's like a big chunk of time to do a lot of things. You can get a lot of trouble within that time. And I did a lot of stupid things within that time, and I didn't get in trouble for it. I didn't get caught for it. But I think that my initial goal from this day until February was to go to college. I was planning on going to community college to pass time. I heard about financial aid and all the money people get for financial aid, and I think my thinking at that time was that, oh, I can do that, and I can go to college, and I can collect financial aid, and then by the time it's time for me to ship off a boot camp, I can go to boot camp, and then if I want to go back to college, I can do that. That was my plan. I don't know why I didn't stick with it. Like, I remember me and my friends looking for apartments, and different things like that, and it just never fell through. It wasn't that, we flaked on each other or anything like that, but for one reason or another, I think my mindset just changed, and I didn't end up going to college or think about going to college at that time. I remember during the interim in between, well, first of all, that summer after I graduated, literally like the week after I graduated, I did a lot of partying. Speaking about alcoholism, I probably was doing like my heaviest drinking during that time because I was literally just partying from like Monday to Saturday. Probably some days on Sunday it was going to kickbacks and things like that. But I literally, the week after I graduated, one of my friend's cousins had an apartment, and literally what we did was pack the bag and we would go down and we would stay with his cousin who was in college at the time, and we would just party just all week long and hang around and party at night and play hoops and during the day or be out and about during the day or whatever the case may be, surviving off of penny pinching graduation money. Like niggas was pitching in on like UV bottles, and for those of you who know, UV is like the cheap vodka, which was like popular vodka for young adults at that time. We was pitching in those $5 pizzas from Pizza Hut, and that's literally all we were surviving on, just like munchies or snacks, and alcohol, and that's really what we were surviving on that whole summer. Then once the summer came, or once the summer passed, and then people started, going back to their lives and going to school and things like that, I wasn't enrolled in school, so I had to figure out something else to do, and I started applying for jobs, and literally never got hired. I remember when I got into Air Force and I was really settled and got to my first base, I was still getting emails from places that I had applied for 8 months earlier denying me the job. And so I'm glad that I stuck with the Air Force and not think about, I'm gonna get a regular job and just stay home and things like that, because that could have derailed me, especially me still getting denied 8 months later. That does something to someone. And so I'm glad that I didn't go down that route. But yeah, I think my 10-year plan was go to school for a little while, go to the Air Force, and then do the 20-year thing for the Air Force. For those of you who don't know, reason why the Air Force was even, an opportunity for me is because I have an uncle, one of my uncles, I have two uncles, but not my oldest, but out of the two, the oldest one is the one who really probably inspired both of us to really join the Air Force. But that uncle just retired last year. He served 20 years in the Air Force, and that was my inspiration behind joining the Air Force, because I saw what his life was like, and that was like a role model to me. And so I think that was my 10-year plan, was that I was going to do 20 years in the Air Force like he was planning to do, which he later eventually accomplished. And it didn't pan out that way. I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad I'm here. I've told you all the story. I think I told you all the story in early episodes about, why it panned out the way it did. But I'm definitely glad that I'm here today and I'm not listed in the Air Force, and I'm not thinking of, spending another 10 years in the Air Force, because I don't know that we will be here in terms of recording this podcast if that was the case. So I'm definitely grateful for that, and grateful for how things turned out. I mean, how we got to here was definitely a rough road. And so I can't say, I'm not going to sit here and act like everything was peaches and cream. But, I mean, we're here, and we're alive, and we're enjoying life, and we're happy, and that's what's really most important right now. But, it was definitely a rocky road. And it started really with my senior year. My senior year was rough. I was happy during my senior year, but internally I was dealing with a lot of stuff that was really just, draining. My background, I don't come from money, and that played a huge role in, just determining my moves and determining how I feel about certain things and how I dealt with certain things. So even going into my senior year, I was kind of remiss. I was kind of not held back, but I was kind of laid back in terms of just being happy and being about to finish school, because I just know where money was coming from in regards to all the events that was being planned for my senior year. So lack of funds really, really hindered me specifically, and I get into that a little while. But even later in my senior year, my grandfather died in April, and just think about someone who's been in your life since you were a kid, and seeing you transition and seeing you growing and maturing and things like that as a man. And it's one of the, men who has a stable figure and is a stable character in the storyline of your life. They get taken away from you, months away from you about to accomplish a big accomplishment. That definitely plays a part. I'm still dealing with that today. I think as I get older, I'm really understanding how that affected me. But being 18 years old, I really didn't know how me losing my grandfather a month or 2 months before me graduating high school, how much of it played a role. But it played a huge role in just shaping who I became, and it played a huge role in how that year ended. Like I said, I did a lot of partying, I did a lot of drinking. Now I look back, I was probably not really dealing with the sorrows that came with losing someone important in my life. And so I didn't understand that, I was probably turning to drinking because, not for one, obviously, my friends are doing it, so it's a cool thing to do, but it probably was helping me take my mind off a lot of things. And so that played a huge role in just a tumultuous time during my senior year. Think about the pressure of determining my future. Like, I was shifting. I told you all, I spent majority of my life thinking that I was going to be a professional athlete. And so I didn't really make that shift from not really pursuing sports until my senior year. I started to make the shift. I came to a realization in my sophomore year, but I didn't really make the shift mentally until my senior year, because I was still hanging on by a thread of maybe I could still, go to college and be an athlete. Even though I knew basketball wasn't going to work out, I started doing track in my sophomore year. And by my junior year, I got really good. So when the senior year came around, I still had the opportunity to either go to like a D2 school or go to community college. I was still letting that thought linger on in the back of my mind. And honestly, I didn't stop thinking about that, or I didn't stop thinking that was an opportunity until February of my senior year. And how I thought about that was because earlier in the year, I took the ASVAB. The ASVAB is the test that you take to get into the military. It's read by all branches, and they determine, your value to the service based off of how you score on those tests. And that's literally how you get the jobs, or how jobs become available to you. And so my senior year, I took the ASVAB in November just because I knew, okay, this is probably an opportunity. If I do want to do that into, getting and being in the military, then I was going to take it just in case. But I was still playing basketball. I was still running track, playing basketball. We had a good year. I didn't play at all my senior year. I played maybe 2 or 3 minutes a game at most. I was like the 11th, 12th man on the roster. And I didn't play a lot, so I knew basketball wasn't an option because I was behind the curve in talent, and I wasn't as tall as I thought I was going to be. So that wasn't an option, but I was still very good at track. And what made the switch for me from wanting to become a collegiate athlete into me wanting to go to the Air Force was in the middle of playoffs. I hadn't taken any of those standardized tests in the ACTs or SCTs yet. And so I was putting it off because I'm a procrastinator. I'm still 10 years later, I'm still a big procrastinator. I wasn't going to take those tests until the later half of the year. I think the deadline to take one of those tests is February. And so one morning I woke up in February, and it was either go to basketball practice or go take the standardized test. And this was the deadline. This was the last opportunity I had to take this test, and I chose to go to basketball practice. Even though I knew I wasn't going to play in the next game, that's just how much I enjoyed being around my teammates. That's just how much I love the sport. And so that morning I woke up and decided not to take that test. It was the morning I decided I wasn't going to college. I wasn't going to pursue the college route anymore. Just because in California, where I'm pretty sure it's nationally, but in order to go to like one of those D2, D3, D1 schools, you have to have an entry level exam, which is those two tests. And when I decided not to take those tests, that ruled me out of the possibility of doing that. So I still had an opportunity to become a collegiate athlete, but I would have to have gone to community college. And I knew when I woke up that morning and decided not to take that test that just wasn't a route for me no more, and I had to shift my life. And I was just walking into a new, I guess, idealization or realization of what my life was going to look like for the next year. And so that was just my decision in making that switch from being a collegiate athlete, or potentially being a collegiate athlete, to being a military member. It literally happened that morning. I don't remember what date it was, but I remember it happened in February because we were in the midst of playoffs, and playoffs don't happen until mid-February, and we had practice for a playoff matchup. Another thing, reason why that year was rough is because I ended up just having senioritis. Like, my senior year, for those of you who know what senioritis is, it's literally just getting lazy because you're a senior. You see the finish line, and so you become less involved with, you know, the curriculum. You become less involved with the coursework, and you just like feel the need to not want to do things no more. And senioritis really hit me hard. Once I decided I was going to the military, my shift in what was needed as far as credits to graduate high school, that burden lifted so lightly off my shoulders, because there are so many courses and so many credits and so many things you have to have in order to get into certain colleges in California, and colleges all around the world, period. But if you're just graduating, those goals and those credits and everything that are needed, they shift, and they shift drastically. And so once I decided I was going to the Air Force, my goal shifted from, you know, what I needed to get into college and what I needed to graduate high school. And what I needed to graduate high school was a bare minimum. I was already on track or past it at that point. Mind you, this is February, so I still have 4 months left in the school year. And so once that happened, you know, certain electives I would take and certain written languages I would take and didn't need the AP classes I was taking, just didn't need a lot of stuff. And so as a result, my burden got lighter, and my workload got lighter. And the rest of my classes, I think my senior year, I only had to take like 3 or 4 classes, and one of those classes was basketball PE, which is basically basketball practice. And so essentially I had 3 classes my senior year, and the rest of those 3 classes, it was like, if it wasn't easy to pass, if I couldn't just walk in and do what needed to be done and not retain whatever we were doing outside of that, it wasn't going to be easy. And so I remember one of those, I don't remember any of the classes I had actually, but I remember one of those classes I had trouble with was an English class. Like, I was doing so well in the beginning, had an A, wherever the case may be. And then towards the end of the year, when I started to develop senioritis, I started to fall behind. And what I mean by fall behind, like seriously fall behind, like by the time those last couple of weeks of the school year came, I think I had like a D in that class, and that teacher was like on the borderline of failing me, just because I was missing like 20 assignments. Like, the only reason why I passed that class is because I had my girlfriend at the time. We both had the same class, same period. So the course load was the same. Everything we were doing was the same. And because she was getting ready to go to college, like, she had to take everything serious, and she had to, you know, make sure her grades was straight. Me, I wasn't getting ready to go to college, so I didn't care. But luckily, that teacher was like, you know, if you make up all these assignments, and I'm not lying to y'all, I missed probably about 20 assignments, just thinking off the top of my head. And that's the reason why I went from like an A to a D in a matter of 2 or 3 months. But the teacher was lenient. He was like, if you make up all these assignments, you know, I'll give you credit for them. And so that's when me having a girlfriend that was in my class came to help me, because I remember, I guess in that class, it was like a portfolio. And what I mean by portfolio was like all our work was kept in a binder, and he literally just, he graded whatever that assignment was, and he gave it back. It was things like poems, things like essays. It was an English class, so it was like all this type of literature stuff. And so literally what I did to pass that class, and I did it the last week, literally what I mean by the last week is the last couple of days of school when none of the seniors are going to school because they know they're graduating. I had to go to school like one of those last days to turn this assignment. But what I did was took her portfolio, and I literally just copied everything that she did, and I turned in this booklet of like 20 assignments that I missed, and he gave me the grade, and it bumped it up from like a D to like, I remember it was a C or a B, but for the most part, like, I was checked out. And that's how hard senioritis hit me, that I had one class that was threatening to fail me. And I've never failed any classes. Like, I've always had good grades. There was one year, I think my sophomore year, to where my grades kind of dwindled. I went from like a mainly A student to like a B and C student. I think I had like a D on one of those progress reports that year. But for the most part, I've had good grades throughout my grade school career. But that year and those last couple months, once I decided I was checked out and I didn't need anything, all I needed to do was graduate, I literally checked out. But yeah, senioritis hit me hard. That was another thing that made that year rough, because even though I was enjoying the years, I was enjoying my life, there was a potential threat of me not walking across the stage. And me not walking across the stage, the reason why I did that, the reason why I copied all those 20 assignments is because, dog, I don't even want to know what that aftermath of me not walking across the stage would have been in my household. Like, at that point, I was 18 years old. I wasn't getting whoopings or anything like that, but probably got a whooping had I had to go home and tell my mom, yeah, I'm not graduating. Just because it's like, that's like the bare minimum you can do. You know, all the hard work your parents go through and all the things they do for you. The bare minimum you can do was graduate high school. That's how it is in my household. Like, you know, schooling was always important. Excelling in school was always important. My mom always had children who has excelled in academics, and I was her second oldest. So I was setting precedent for the youngest ones. And because I was a knucklehead and because I got lazy, I was potentially not even about to graduate. Getting back to something I briefly touched on earlier was just the lack of funds, not threatening, but having a hindrance on that year. Thinking about the different things that I was getting ready to go into. You know, you have prom, you have homecoming, you have prom, you have homecoming, you have grad night, you have so many other things, so many activities that school planned for seniors in their last years. And I wasn't excited about none of them because I didn't know how any of them were going to happen. And that's one thing that I love about my mom. We didn't always have the funds. We didn't always have the latest whatever. But she always, when it was something that she felt that was important or she saw the importance for us, she made ends meet to make sure that we got that. And so I don't know how I did it, but I went to every senior year activity that year. The only thing I didn't go to was my prom, but the only thing I didn't go to was my homecoming. And the only reason why I didn't go to my homecoming is because I went to homecoming at my old school with my friends, which was also something that was great. Wait, I don't think I went to homecoming at all. You know what? I didn't go to homecoming at all that year. I don't know why I didn't go to homecoming. I don't care either. But I didn't go to homecoming that year, but I went to grad night. I don't know how. I went to prom. I don't know how. And just did a bunch of different other things. I remember even stressing about prom. Man, my idea for prom, I remember talking to my girlfriend at the time, when she asked me, you know, what I was going to wear. This was around the time that Kanye West's Runaway Love video dropped. And that blazer that he's wearing, or tuxedo that he's wearing in that video, was one of the cleanest outfits I've never seen. For those of you who don't remember, he has like a, I don't know if it's tan or it's off-white or it's beige, what you want to call it. But in that video, he's wearing like a suede tan off-white tuxedo with a black lapel. And then he has a white button-up shirt under it and black pants. And when she asked me that, my inspiration, that's what I was planning on doing. I don't know how the hell this is going to happen. I don't know how it's going to be accomplished, but that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know how much it cost. I didn't realize that, you know, if this was going to be accomplished, this is going to have to be like a custom-made blazer, because this is not a color that stores have on hand. But when she asked me, that's what I told her. And so for those of you who don't know anything with girls, when it comes to whether it's proms, homecomings, weddings, you know, these things have to be custom made. And so she had a custom made dress based on that color I was supposed to wear. Me not knowing that, you know, how serious this thing was, I ended up getting my tuxedo last minute, probably the minute before. I ended up going to Men's Warehouse. My uncle, shout out to my Uncle Mark, he ended up taking me down to Men's Warehouse and getting me a tuxedo. But I ended up getting I think my tuxedo was white, so I wore everything I planned on wearing except for the blazer. The blazer wasn't the color that I wanted. It was kind of like an off-white, but it wasn't the color exactly that I wanted. And so we were kind of matching because I was wearing white, but the dress that she had made was the exact color of the tuxedo that Kanye West was wearing. And so I felt in that instance, but I mean, you got to take the small victories and enjoy them, right? So I was just happy to be able to afford to go to prom, because she knew what our funds look like in my household. That thing was probably not even a possibility. I was lucky enough to even afford a tuxedo. I'm lucky that I didn't just have a button up and some pants to go to prom, because again, if she knew what the funds looked like in my household, that thing was not supposed to happen. And so I'm definitely grateful for the things that my mom accomplished in my senior year, because I don't know where it came from, but then again, we speak about the things about you know, it takes a village. Like I speak about my uncle. My uncle helped me out. My grandmother helped me out. Just my family in general. Whenever, you know, my mom couldn't provide or she needed help or anything, you know, I always had family to fall back on. Even still to this day, I still have family that I can fall back on if I'm ever in hard times, and that is the true meaning of what it takes a village. That is the true meaning of it takes a village, because it does take a village to raise young kids, especially young black men, because there's so many different things that are against us, and especially with single mothers, there are so many opportunities that we are not afforded. But when we have that village behind us, man, the sky is the limit. Another thing in my senior year was just my transportation. I will never forget my transportation to school, man. So I used to catch the bus to school because I lived like 20 minutes away. For those of you who are locals and listen to the podcast and are locals of the High Desert, well, I guess I don't know what statute of limitations is, so I don't know when I could go to jail for this. But I went to school in Victorville, and my mother lived outside of Victorville. I'm not gonna disclose anything, because again, I don't know what statute of limitations look like, and I'm not about to snitch on my own mom. But we lived like 20 minutes away. But my grandmother, she lived in the Victorville school district, and so when I first moved to Victorville, I lived with my grandmother. And that was my sophomore year. And then my junior year, my senior year, I moved back with my mom. But I was also like splitting time in between going back from both households. My junior year, I was really like half and half. My senior year, by the time my senior year came, I was really like majority with my mom, and probably spent like 20% of my grandparents' house. And so I say all that to say, the main reason why I did that is because the fear of leaving again. And this is going back beyond the 10 years and going back beyond high school. But, you know, I covered early in episodes in Speak My Peace podcast about, you know, up to a certain point in my life, I had only known Compton, California. And then middle school, I moved, and then I moved again in high school. And so out of the fear of changing school districts for a fourth time, I was like, I'm just going to catch this bus to school. And that bus ride was about like an hour and a half. So literally every morning I was waking up at 5 o'clock just to get to school on time. And I did all that just out of fear of not wanting to restart and reset for the fourth time. Like, I don't think parents take into account, especially if you have the luxury of, you know, spending your entire school year in one district, they don't take into account what the changing does for children. And for me, it played a huge role on me. Like, when I left Compton and moved to the IE, I hated living in the IE literally up until the year I was about to leave. Like, I didn't get settled until the year that I left. And then it was the same thing with Victorville. Like, I hated Victorville. I never really got settled in Victorville, but I started to enjoy it because it was like I knew what the end goal looked like, and I knew that I was getting ready to get out of there. And so I didn't want to have to reset my life entirely again. And so out of fear of doing that, I literally just stayed at that school and did not transfer. But that bus ride was like an hour and a half long just to get to school, and I had to wake up at 5 o'clock every day, which is probably why I have no problem waking up at 6 o'clock every day today. But that's another part in the senioritis and me being, you know, happy. That probably played a part in me deciding to go to the military as well, because once I got rid of so many classes, I didn't have to go to school until I think like 9 o'clock, because I only had 3 classes, and those 3 classes was like 3rd period, 4th period, 5th period. And so as a result of that, you know, I didn't really have to worry about waking up early and being at school, you know, at the first bell or anything like that. So that also played a part into it. And I guess just me just wanting to be settled for once and wanting to have being able to leave somewhere, I was just like, you know, I'm just going to ride this out. And if this is what I got to do to get to school, this is what I want to do to get to school. But even just speaking about all that, like, I don't want to say I ever got settled, because I want to say I met a lot of friends there at my high school. The high school I graduated from, I went to 2 different high schools. But I made a lot of friends in my second high school, where it was like I can tell who I was at that point, and I knew that a lot of those friends that I made was going to be friends that, you know, were going to stick around for a lifetime. Like, I still have a handful of friends that I communicate with today, and I foresaw that those people were going to be my friends later on. But even just thinking about who I was in that time in school and the reason why I just didn't want to start over, I thought back to like my sophomore year. So like my sophomore year, when I first got to that school, again, you got to think about this is a kid that's transferring from one high school to another high school, really getting settled. And like, I remember I used to eat lunch alone, and not on some weirdo shit, not on some, excuse my language, not on just like being a weirdo, not on being a loner, but just me just enjoying my own company and enjoying music and just not wanting to be around people. I used to eat lunch alone, and I don't say all that to ask for sympathy and empathy. Like, I'm one of the coolest people on earth. If y'all don't believe it, my nieces and nephew believe it, and that's really all that matter. But the reason why I did that is because, like, again, I got to a place and I seen what people was on once I got to that school, and I realized that like none of these people that, you know, that I communicate with, none of the people I see in class, none of the people I see that I play basketball with are not people that I'm going to want to be lifelong friends with. So it wouldn't make sense for me to like accumulate myself and get associated with these people, because these aren't going to be friendships that's going to last me or serve me for a lifetime. And I remember one day, I used to eat lunch away from people, and two of my friends, shout out to Jeezy, my friend RJ, who I still talk to today, one of my close friends. Also, I guess while I'm on it, check out his SoundCloud. I'm gonna find the name so that I can recommend it for you all. But he's definitely a where the hell is his SoundCloud? He's definitely a dope DJ that I tune into now. Check him out on SoundCloud. His SoundCloud is RJ ARRJAY. Once again, his SoundCloud is ARRJAY. Definitely some good mixes on there to check out. But I remember him and one of my friends, Jamel, they found me at lunchtime one day. And I don't remember how long into the school year it was, but they found me at lunchtime one day, found me eating alone. And they were telling me, because like all the basketball players, they used to eat. So we had two levels to our high school. We had the top floor, it was broke off in like one quad, and then it was another quad. And then downstairs, it was just one main quad that was by the basketball gym, where all the basketball players, football players, cool people, where everybody just hung out. And so I used to stay upstairs in one of the quads and just eat up there, just, you know, by myself, listening to music. This was 2009. There was a lot of great music around this time. And one of the days they found me, it was like, hey, you know, just come down here, come eat with us. And I honestly was like remiss. I didn't want to do it, but I could tell just the type of people they were. I think I had class with Jermel. I don't know if I had class with RJ, but they were cool people just from me hooping with them and the conversations we did have in basketball and the things that we had interest in. But the reason why I share this story is because when I speak about, you know, not really trying to associate with people that I knew were going to serve me for a long time, that story sticks out to me because RJ is one of the people that found me and invited me downstairs, and to this day, he's one of my good friends. I want to say he's one of my closest friends, as if we talk every day. I want to say he's my best friend or anything like that, but he's one of those friends that you don't have to talk to too much, and everything is still the same, and that's someone that you can appreciate. And that relationship served me well. Like, again, he invited me downstairs, and I spent the rest of my school year and then the following 2 school years eating lunch down there around basketball, the basketball players. None of them were my closest friends, but they were friends. We had a common interest in basketball. But RJ was someone I shared common interests with: basketball, clothes, kicks, and music as well. And so, you know, we had a lot of common interests, and still to this day, the majority of the conversations we have are centered around those things, which is why I shout out his SoundCloud, because like I'm not surprised that he's taking a liking or taking the thing to DJing, because he has great interest in music. But the reason why I'm bringing up, you know, relationship serving him, like during that time, you know, him inviting me downstairs and spending lunch with them, I unintentionally later got introduced to someone that I ended up dating. And it's crazy how life works. You know, we never officially got introduced during that time, but I met that person during that time as a result of him inviting me down there. Another thing, when I speak about, you know, relationship serving me, I speak about the lack of funds. I don't know if I couldn't afford a cap and gown, or I just didn't want to pay the full amount for a cap and gown, but the cap and gown that I graduated with was one that I borrowed from him, because he graduated the year or 2 years before I did, and so we were the same size, the same height, and things like that. And so I think I was on Twitter and was looking to borrow someone's cap and gown, and he handed that to me free of charge. And that's again another relationship that has served me. Certain things like that, you can see how they play out and see the type of person that people are. And so I'm not surprised that is a relationship that I've held on to. I'm not surprised that that's a relationship that has done me well. I'm not sure that I've done as much for him in return, but I'm definitely appreciative of it. And you don't, that's one thing about high school is that, you make a lot of friends and you go through certain things, and you think that, certain relationships are going to withstand the test of time because of similarities you may have or commonalities you may have, but it's never the case. Like, I've fallen out with a lot of people that I'm just not even sad about falling out with, because I understand that when I was younger and the commonalities we had and the lifestyle that we lived, it was okay to, have those friendships. But now as an adult, it just no longer serves me. And we have to be able to recognize what serves us and what no longer serves us, and when it comes in the terms of relationships, friendships, wherever the case it may be. I'm getting ready to close up this episode, but I say all that to say that I think who I am now is exactly who I was 10 years ago. Like that, when I speak about, the top of this episode, I wrote off the list of things that I'm proud of. That's a huge accomplishment. I'm glad that today, June 8th, 2021, I can look in the mirror and still see the same person that I saw June 8th, 2011. I may be older, maybe wiser, but I definitely can identify who that 18-year-old kid was and still see him in this 28-year-old kid. And that shouldn't go unnoticed, especially with giving myself flowers and thinking about my journey this past 10 years. And I think who I was then is exactly who I am now, and probably a better version of myself for worse or for less. When I think about the metaphor, the marathon that Nipsey Hussle always spoke about, the reason why I'm always attracted to that, especially with me being a runner and understanding the process of being a marathon runner, the reason why I really took to that is because I understood what that metaphor was about. And life is a journey, and you can't run it at anyone else's pace. You have to run it at your own pace. You can't spend your time looking to your left or looking to your right. You literally have to do it on your own time and at your own speed. The build up to a marathon, the training that goes into it, that's what this past 10 years has been. This past 10-year journey has been that training for the marathon. Like, I still have so many things I need to accomplish in my life, and I'm on my way to that. I haven't even gotten to the marathon yet, but I'm training for that marathon so that by the time that I am within that process and by the time that I am in that run, I'm well trained and I'm well prepared for whatever may be thrown at me while I'm on that road. And that's one thing that we have to definitely take into account when we're dealing with this thing called life. It has valleys and peaks, but we have to always make sure that we are well prepared for whatever is thrown at us and whatever obstacles may come. And it shouldn't go unnoticed that, everything or nothing is going to be handed to us and nothing is going to be given to us, and life is not going to be sweet. When I look back on this past 10 years, being a high school graduate to now being a degree holder from a major institution or a major university, everything that, even though none of this was planned, everything that I've accomplished and everything that I've dealt with and everything that I've overcome in this past 10 years, I was built for it. And that process started with everything that I had to go through throughout them years of leading up to me graduating high school. And so I'm not surprised that I am where I am now, because that training came prior to this. In the latest J. Cole album, there's an excerpt of Dame Lillard to where he said, those big moments that you deal with, those big moments that you're put in, they don't just happen at that time. The preparation for those come during the summertime. The season ends in one summer. The preparation for the end of that summer comes the summer prior to that. And I truly believe that in the metaphor of life as well. You know, everything that I've done in the past 10 years and everything that I've done in those 4 years in high school has prepared me for where I am now. And that shouldn't go unnoticed. That's the Speak My Peace podcast for this week, y'all. Again, I'm glad to share this milestone with you all. For younger people going through high school, getting ready to graduate high school, get ready to enter college, man, take your time. Again, I hate to take someone else's metaphor, I hate to take someone else's phrase, but life is literally a marathon, and you have to enjoy it. You have to take what is given to you. You have to take everything that comes at you and take it with a grain of salt, even the bad things. Understand, you know, what you're going through, and understand how that plays off later in life. If I had to tell you all that I knew that I was going to be here today, where I'm at now, I'd be lying. I knew that I was set up for success. I knew that I wasn't going to fail just because of the preparation of my life prior to this moment, but I had no idea that what I would accomplish would be at the level that I'm accomplishing them. This podcast has been one of those accomplishments. You know, I didn't speak about it as an accomplishment for a specific reason, but I had no idea that I was going to have this podcast 10 years later. 10 years ago, I didn't know what a podcast was, if I'm being honest, but here we are today. You all are tuning into my podcast. I have listeners all across the globe, in Russia, in Korea, in England, in Germany, and so many other places. But I had no idea that this was going to happen. So to my young people, man, enjoy the process, enjoy being young. Just enjoy life, because, you know, once you are out of that grade school system, yes, life gets real, but it also molds you into who you are going to become when you become a mature adult. That's the Speak My Peace podcast for this week. Before we do go out of here, my what to watch for this week. Watch some WNBA. WNBA games are more accessible now than ever. They air them on CBS, they air them on Facebook, they air them on ESPN. You can't miss a WNBA game. Tune in to watch those women play. It's definitely great basketball. I've been catching when I can. I've been watching them more than I have in the past. So that's a what to watch for this week. Thank you for tuning into Speak My Peace podcast. If you listen on YouTube, making sure you're subscribing, liking, leaving comments. If you listen on anything else, make sure you're subscribing. And that's all I have for you all this week. That's the Speak My Peace podcast. I'm out.